and his friends' experience with those who disbelieve among their friends, where they're saying basically this belief in God was a result of people's ignorance in the past, not understanding and being able to explain the phenomena in the world around them. They had to resort to God to explain it. And now we know what is going on in the world around us. We don't need to resort to God anymore. Well, the reality is that we don't know what is going on in the world around us. We really don't know. It is a delusion and arrogance on the part of human beings to claim that we actually do know what is going on in the world around us. If you ask them, do you believe in the mind? Right? They say yes. Ancient people believed in the mind, and you still believe in the mind. Have you ever seen a mind? Can you show me your mind? Because is the mind the brain? No. You see what I'm saying? So we say, hey, just in the same way you believe in the mind, as the ancient peoples believed in the mind, they couldn't see it, you can't see it, but you still believe. Are you going to say, well, that was the ancient belief, let's forget it, we don't have minds anymore? No. Okay? So we say that just because something was believed in the past, and it is something which could not be seen and measured by science, etc., it doesn't necessarily mean that it was wrong. In the previous session, we completed our look at the major categories of Tawheed. Now we will look at the opposite, the antithesis, the major categories of Shirk. And in fact, these categories all match the categories of Tawheed, as we have the unity in maintaining Allah's oneness, His unique oneness with regards to His dominion. We have Shirk in that same regard. And as we have the unity of maintaining Allah's oneness in His names and attributes, we also have Shirk in that regard. And we have talked about some aspects of Shirk so far in them. And also with regards to maintain the unity of Allah in worship, you have also Shirk in this regard too. And what we're going to do now is basically identify the major areas of Shirk on a systematic basis in these three aspects. The first, and why I want to stress the importance of understanding this, understanding the Shirk in here in this regard, because of the fact that Allah has stated in the Quran in no uncertain terms in Surah An-Nisa verse 48, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Indeed, Allah will not forgive the association of partners, that is Shirk, with Him, but He forgives sins lesser than that to whomsoever He wishes. So Allah has placed this issue of Shirk on a very high level in terms of danger. You know, this is the unforgivable sin. If a person dies in this state, knowing that it is wrong but insisting on following it, then they have condemned themselves to hell. And this is why when people raise the issue, you Muslims, what do you say about Mother Teresa? You know, she was such a good person, lived such a righteous life, serving, the needs of humankind, and basically you're saying because she is Christian, she's going to hell. That doesn't make sense. What kind of religion is this? Well, the point is that though on one hand she might have done some very good deeds with regards to human beings, serving humanity, this kind of things in this life, on the other hand, she has done, as far as we can see, the greatest possible sin. Shirk. She has worshipped Jesus instead of worshipping Allah. And that cancels the value of the good deeds that she has done. It far outweighs the good that she has done. See, they can only see the good, and they cannot see how great the evil that she is involved in becomes. Because we ask them, so you as a Christian, what do you think of Sai Baba? Sai Baba, who does a lot of good things for Indian people who worship him believing that he is God, right? Some 8 to 10 million Indians believe that Sai Baba is God incarnate, including the President of India, right? Now, Sai Baba has projects which are philanthropic, serving the needs of people and helping. What do you say about Sai Baba? Do you think he's going to paradise? The Christians can say, no, he's not going to paradise. Why? Look at all the good that he has done. Well, in the same way, you are going to negate all the good that he has done because he promotes the idea that he is God. In the same way, we negate all the good that Mother Teresa has done, because of her belief that Jesus was God. Right? If she died in that state, knowing otherwise, then she is relegated to hell forever. Technically speaking, we cannot say Mother Teresa will be in hell forever. We can't say that. Technically. Because we are not allowed to say anybody will be in paradise, to say so-and-so is a martyr, or to say so-and-so will be as an individual among the people of hell. Unless Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, so-and-so will be in paradise, so-and-so is in hell. Because Allah knows the circumstances of people. We can say in general, those people who are practicing this belief we know as Christianity are going to hell. They're headed for hell. That is a system of disbelief. It is a system of paganism. It is, everything, idolatry. So it is, and it's people in hell. But we cannot say it for individuals. We don't have the authority to say that about individuals because Allah knows what they actually believed, what was actually brought to them, etc. And there is a particular hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari which clarifies that for us. And it's the hadith of the man who, when the time for him to die came, he told his children to burn his body, to pound it into ashes, and to sprinkle some of the ashes on the land and some on the sea. As he said, because if Allah caught a hold of me, He's gonna really punish me. So they did what he instructed them to do. And then Allah told the earth and the sea to give up his ashes and to bring him back. And he was brought before Allah. And Allah asked him, why did you tell your family to do that? He said, out of my fear of you, O Allah. And Allah said, because of it, you are forgiven and you're going to paradise. Okay? Though if you were to say today, I'm going to have myself cremated because that way Allah is not going to be able to get a hold of me, we say this is shirk. This is a statement of shirk. Because you're denying Allah's ability to resurrect you, to bring you back. But in this man's case, because it was out of his fear, sincere fear of Allah, Allah forgave the wrong act which he did, which was an act of shirk and kufr, and gave him paradise. So that's why we say, Prophet ﷺ revealed that to us, informed us of that to let us know that in the end you cannot judge. Just as he also told us, one of the first people who will be put in the hellfire will be the quote-unquote martyr. He said, that individual, Allah will ask him, what did you do with the courage and the power, etc., which I gave you? And the man will say, I used this for your sake, O Allah. I fought for your sake. I fought in defense of the faith, and I gave up my life for your sake. And Allah will say, you lied. You did not fight for my sake. You fought so that people would say, what a brave man. What a courageous man. What a hero. And it was said, he will be drawn away on his face and thrown into hell. This is why it is wrong to say, so and so is a martyr. We don't know. If Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said so and so is a martyr, then we can say, yes, so and so was a martyr. Otherwise, the most we can say is, this person, we hope he will be a martyr. Insha'Allah, Allah will accept what he has done as an act of martyrdom. But we cannot say with a surety that that person is in fact a martyr. Because when you say a person is a martyr, what you're saying is they are going to paradise. You are defining here who is going to paradise in that regard. And we're not allowed to do that. And we have many occasions in the life of Prophet ﷺ where he pointed this out. After one of the battles, he was walking amongst the dead, and some of the companions with them were with him, and they said, so and so is a martyr. So and so is a martyr. He didn't say anything. So and so is a martyr. He said, no. He said, why not? All the other people that they said was martyr, his silence approved their statement. But that's one person, he said, no, he's not a martyr. He said, why, O Messenger of Allah? We saw him fighting like this. He said, no. He fought for the spoils. And they went, when they moved his body over, they found inside of his cloak, he had stolen some of the booty from the battle. So that's what he was fighting for. You see, externally, it looked like he died along with everybody else, a martyr. But his intention was different. And had the Prophet ﷺ not told them, they would not have known. And that's why we don't have the authority to define who is a martyr and who is not. Because that requires revelation. So, we're looking now at shirk. Shirk in rububiyyah, first and foremost, in the concept of Allah's dominion over all things. This may take place in two ways. One which we call shirk by association. Yarhamkullah. Shirk by association. Or the other way, shirk by negation. Now, shirk by association means that one or other of Allah's powers have become personified as gods. Either it's in the case of the Zoroastrians, who have the god of good and the god of evil, which I spoke about before, or it could be in the form of the Hindus, who believe in the supreme being Brahman as being the single being, the one, the absolute. Hindus believe in one God. But they also believe that some of God's powers, his powers being the creator, is represented by a god, Brahma. His powers as being the preserver is represented by the god Vishnu. And his power of being the destroyer is represented by the god Shiva. So they have a trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, which they worship as individual powers of God. Unlike the Christians, they also have God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, three gods in one. Similar situation, where God's attributes become manifest, he becomes carnate, whatever, and he is worshipped as some divisible being. And this is also manifest in the arguments of the Christians when they want to explain to us how God can be three and one at the same time. They have a variety of theories. We know the egg theory, which is common. They say, well, just as the egg is comprised of the white, the yolk, and the shell, well, it's all one egg. They say, well, that's how God is. We said, that's how an egg is. That's not God, okay? For you, your God is like an egg. For us, God is not like anything. It is creation, okay? Similarly, they have what is known as the tree theory. A tree theory involves believing, as they say, explain, that as a tree has branches, it has a trunk, and it has roots. These all parts make up the one God. We say, that's a tree. We don't believe God is divisible into parts like a tree. Or they have the water theory, right? As water can be liquid, it can be a gas, or it can be a solid in the form steam and form of ice. They say, in that way, God. We say, no, that's water. It's not God. So this kind of representation of God in these ways, this is similar, represents shirk by association, where God becomes manifest in different ways, and those ways are worshipped by people as being separate gods, yet at the same time in their explanations it is one God. And you also have among Sufi channels those who believe in what they refer to as Rijalul Ghaib, the people of the unseen world. That group is headed by the Qutb, or the pole, right? And they believe that, certain things take place in this world by their actions. So they have associated powers in this world along with Allah. So in this way, shirk is happening by associationism. We also have, as we said, shirk by negation. This is basically denying God's existence. Those who say there is no God. You have some religions like ancient Buddhism, which doesn't believe in a God at all. Ancient Buddhism doesn't believe in God at all. There's no God. What for them is God, what they treat as God, is that the individual whose spirit goes through the different stages and finally is released in the experience of nirvana, that this spirit becomes a free agent that is able to do things in this world, and you pray to that spirit. But that's not God. They just replace God with the spirits, these free spirits that have reached this particular stage. The other branch, which is the more common branch of Buddhism today, they have turned Buddha into a god and they just worship Buddha. That's the more common version. And you have other religions like the Jainism. They also don't have a god. But similarly, all of these that deny it, they also elevate other aspects of Allah's creation, whether it be the souls of the liberated beings, as becoming immortal and omniscient and omnipotent, etc. They have turned these actually into God. They've given God's attributes to some of his creation. People like Pharaoh, who said to Musa when he called him to the belief in Allah, Ana Rabbukumul A'la, I am your Lord Most High. This is an example. He is denying the existence of a Lord. Told Haman, listen, build this big old ladder for me. Let me go up and have a look at, Musa's God. I don't believe there's any God up there. Anyway, right? I am your Lord Most High. This is an example of denial of God's existence. You have philosophers, people like Jean-Paul Sartre and Hume and others, also in the history of Western thought, philosophical thought, who denied God's existence. Marxism, Marxist-Leninism, which you know is communism, this is also a system which elevated the denial of God to a state religion. Prior to this, denial of God's existence remained as the belief of a few. And this is why when we look into the Quran, and the Quran addresses issues of belief in Allah, very few verses actually address the concept of those who deny God's existence altogether. They always go from, you believe in God in this respect, well, this is how you should believe in God in all respects. Right? As Allah said in the Quran, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَيَقُولَنَّ اللَّهِ. If you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they'll say Allah. But they have errors in this belief in Allah. Whereas there are few verses in the Quran where Allah addresses those who actually don't believe in God at all, because these have always been a minority in human existence. Of course, as I said, with this 20th century, it was elevated to state religion. In Russia, in China, and elsewhere, communism, the disbelief in God's existence, became a part of the religion of the state. I didn't call it religion, but in fact it became their religion. And what happened is that though this was officially propagated, the mass of the people still believed in God. So there was still a minority. Though it became, as I said, state religion officially, so people, if they wanted to graduate from school or they wanted to get certain posts, they had to externally repeat these claims that God doesn't exist. Internally, they didn't really believe it. And that's why when these systems fell, you found people rushing back to religion. Because now there was no pressure on them, they were free. They left those beliefs because it was only an external thing. And in any case, what we could point out is that even those people who deny God's existence, if you actually pin them down, they do have gods that they worship. They do. Because everybody has to have a God. It is their explanation for things. You find it there. If you go and you ask that individual who's an atheist, okay, you don't believe there's a God. Now, you are a successful businessman. However, such and such a person, who was your classmate, who came from a similar background as you, who graduated with all the different things, he is an utter failure. Why? Utter failure, why? What does he say? My good luck. His bad luck. And if you go and you pin him down to the various events which are taking place in his day or her day, you will find them when you ask them, what about this? They say, good luck. What about that? Bad luck. What about this? Good luck. What about that? Bad luck. So you find they're saying bad luck and good luck controls the whole of their life in the end. And the other term which they use instead of luck, they say fortune. My good fortune. Now the term fortune, right, comes from the Greek term Fortuna, which is the name of the goddess of good and bad luck. Fortuna. So that's their god, fortune. The ancient Greek goddess. Of course, when we assign the powers of God to a blind force like fortune and luck, what this does is it eliminates the requirements of worship. Right? Now if it's a personal God who has consciousness, etc., then you have to deal with, well, what does God want from me? But now when you look at it as a blind force, then you don't have to deal with that. So really it's just an escape from dealing with the obligations of belief in God. It's just a substitute. So don't let them fool you into thinking they don't have a God. They do have gods, every last one of them. Now, the other area of shirk is shirk in al-asma wa sifat, in Allah's names and attributes. This also occurs in two ways. One which we call shirk by humanization, and the other which we call shirk by deification. By deification. Those of you who may have difficulty reading that word in English, please don't pronounce it as defecation, right? Because that has a whole different meaning altogether. Right? It's deification, which means making something or someone a god. All right? So, humanization. What this refers to is making God like His creation. That God has a form. Whether it is a human form or an animal form or whatever form, this is, in general, we can call it shirk by humanization. Why? Because people, generally speaking, represent God in human form. Human beings looked at as being the highest stage of creation, then they more commonly represent God in their own form. And of course, historically speaking, this is what Christianity has portrayed. When they promote the idea that Jesus was God, right? And they have their paintings, Michelangelo's painting in the Sistine Chapel, where he spent so many months and years on his back painting this picture, the famous picture you see of this man reaching down and the other man reaching up, and there's like their fingers are like this, and this is representing God giving the spark of life to Adam. Of course, when they represent God, He is represented as a European, with a big long white beard, right? And in this way, when they promote this to be the understanding of God in the rest of the non-European world, then they are subtly, putting in the people's minds, subliminally promoting to them that we, Europeans, are closer to God. We are God-like. And this creates in the minds of the non-Europeans a desire to look like a European. So you'll find them doing all kinds of things, whether it's skin whiteners or it's, cutting the slits out of your eyes, or, people into this whole practice of trying to look like a European, because it has been promoted to them that this is God-like, closer to God, right? And of course, it's the nature of people to do this, right? I don't necessarily believe that this was an insidious plan by the Christians of Europe, that they were trying to really make everybody believe, but that's just the natural consequence, that people who make images of God tend to make images of God looking like themselves. So when you go to the Buddhists, and Buddhism has spread from India, you don't find it in India anymore, though it was a reform movement in Hinduism. You find it in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, in Japan. Now if you go to Sri Lanka, Buddha looks like a Sri Lankan. If you go to Cambodia, he looks like a Cambodian. You go to Japan, he looks like a Japanese. This is the nature of people. When they're going to represent the God to their own people, they try to make that God look like themselves. Right? So this is the natural consequence which happens from trying to represent God in His creation. The other form, shirk by deification, this involves giving Allah's attributes to His creation. We spoke about that in Shiaism and etc. Now, whether we look at individuals, and I mentioned as one example the Nusairiyas, which is a branch of Shiaism, followed by the ruling class of Syria. Right? The Nusairiyas, Hafid Asad, his son, and the others, they belong to this group of Shiites who call themselves Alawis. They're called Alawis or Nusairiyas. They believe, and the mass of Syrians don't believe this. Mass of Syrians are quote-unquote Sunni Muslims. But the ruling class, they believe that Allah became manifest in human form as Muhammad ﷺ, Ali, and Salman al-Farisi. This is their belief. And this takes them right out of Islam. That is kufr in reality. Right? Now, also, if we look at Sufi groups who have given powers, amongst Muslims who call themselves Sunni Muslims, you have those who have given powers of Allah to human beings. Powers which only belong to Allah. And where they have done that, they have committed shirk by deification. The statement of Al-Hallaj, saying, Ana al-Haq, I am the embodiment of truth. As Allah said, describing himself, wa huwa al-Haq, he describes himself as being al-Haq. For any Muslim to say, Ana al-Haq, he's basically saying, I'm Allah. So he's giving Allah's attribute of being the embodiment of truth to himself. This becomes shirk by deification. The other area of shirk by deification is an area that many of us have inadvertently participated in when we went to our high school and we learned Einstein's theory of relativity. When we wrote in our books E equals mc squared, we were writing a statement of shirk. E equals mc squared is a statement of shirk. Yes, people split the atom with it and everything else, but the reality from an Islamic perspective is that this statement E equals mc squared, which is E represents energy, equals mc, that is the square, this is the mass times the square of the speed of light. This is how it is put in actual formula. But when it is expressed as a statement, it is said that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. This is what they say. Energy transforms into matter, matter transforms back into energy. This is the concept, a closed system. So when you say energy can neither be created nor destroyed, what are you saying here? You're saying that energy has no beginning nor end. And that is Allah. Only Allah is without beginning or end. And Allah, of course, has said in the Quran, وَهُوَ خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, He is the creator of everything. Therefore, energy was created by Allah. And Allah also said, كُلُّ مَا عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ, everything in this world will disappear. It will end. Go out of existence. And Allah will bring it back. So everything has an end. Energy will end. It has a beginning and it has an end. That is the correct belief. So therefore, those of us that are still in our studies and we have to learn this thing, in high school, what do? The teacher asks you what's Einstein's theory of relativity. What are you going to write in your book now? Now if you write, hey, this is the statement of shirk, I can't write it, guess what? You just failed your examination. So what you do is when you write this, E equals mc squared, you put in brackets after it, by man. By humankind. Okay, you're covered. Well, we accept that. The human beings, we cannot create or destroy energy. Now, of course, the Darwinian theory of evolution, this is also an explanation for everything which exists, as they say, without having to resort to God. So they elevate the principle of survival of the fittest to God. It becomes the God. This is what is creating and developing and molding and shaping and all these different things. This principle of survival of the fittest. And, of course, as Muslims, we reject that. It is all in accordance with Allah's plan. Now, the last category of shirk is that in Tawheed al-Ibadah, that is in the area of worship, where people have called human beings to worship other than Allah. And the basic message of the prophets was to call people to the worship of Allah alone. As Allah said, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتِ. In Surah Nahl, verse 36, Allah said there, surely I have sent to every nation a messenger, saying, worship Allah and avoid false gods. This is the essence of the message of Islam. So, shirk, major shirk, shirk has been divided now into two aspects, what would be called ash-shirk al-akbar, major shirk, and ash-shirk al-asghar, minor shirk. Major shirk is this act of worshipping others instead of Allah, besides Allah, along with Allah. All of these practices become a form, one or other, of shirk. And as we said before, as Tawheed has external aspects, shirk and internal aspects, shirk also has external and internal aspects. That a person may commit shirk externally by bowing before idols, bowing before others beside Allah, and internally they can commit shirk by emotionally attaching themselves to some aspects of His creation. This is why Prophet ﷺ had said, Ta'isa abdul dirham wa abdul dinar. The worshipper of the dirham and the dinar will always be miserable. He called them worshippers of the dirham and the dinar, meaning the dollars and the pounds. Right? Those who worship this. So he has identified, meaning how does a person worship money? Money becomes the goal in life. It becomes the be-all and the end-all of everything. Everything is judged according to money. Is it going to benefit me monetarily? Is it not going to benefit me monetarily? I do or I don't do, all on the basis of money. Then money becomes our God. And the God may be our desires. As Allah said, أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you not seen the one who takes his desires as his God? Where the person does or doesn't do based on his or her desires. That's what is the deciding factor which controls whether they should do, whether they shouldn't do. It is all based on their desires. Then the desires become our gods. And Shirk al-Asghar, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said in a well-known hadith, the thing I fear most for you is ash-shirk al-asghar, minor shirk. The companions asked, O Messenger of Allah, what is minor shirk? He replied, ar-riya. Ar-riya, that is praying or acting, doing an act of worship for admiration and praise, to impress others. This is called ar-riya. And he said, for verily Allah will say on the day of resurrection, when people are receiving their rewards, go to those for whom you are showing off in the material world and see if you can find any reward for them. That practice, riya, destroys the value of all of our good deeds. And ar-riya is something we have to be particularly careful about, as some of the companions like Ibn Abbas said, riya is like the creeping, or it's more hidden than the creeping of a black ant on a black stone in the middle of a moonless night. This is how subtle it is. More subtle than a black ant creeping on a black stone in the middle of a moonless night. Meaning that it can catch us without us realizing it. Meaning we have to be constantly vigilant to ensure that our practices are free from riya, things which would expose us to desiring the admiration, the praise, etc. of others. And when we find ourselves in such a situation, then we should say the dua, Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min an nushrika bika shay'an na'lamuhu وما لا نعلم ونستغفرك لما لا نعلم. That is, Allahumma inna na'udhu bika an nushrika bika shay'an na'lamu wa nastaghfiruka lima la na'lam. O Allah, we seek refuge in you from knowingly committing shirk with you, and we ask your forgiveness for what we do not know about. That represents the basic aspects of shirk in the major areas of Tawheed. Now, what remains for us is looking at shirk in some particular aspects where people have gone astray. One of the major areas wherein people have gone astray in shirk is in the area of, in Allah's names and attributes, is in the area of what we refer to as al-ulu, or the transcendency of Allah. The concept of Allah being above and beyond His creation. A very important concept. Because for the mass of Muslims today, if you ask them where is Allah, their response will be, in general, Allah is everywhere. This is the common response of the mass of Muslims in the world today. However, the belief that Allah is everywhere is in fact the foundation of idolatry. It is a necessary foundation for those who believe in worshipping Allah through His creation. It is explained by this principle or this concept that Allah is everywhere. Now, if we ask, for example, the Hindu who believes in the one absolute God, Brahman, why he is worshipping this idol which he made with his own hands, somebody made for him or whatever. If he is the average Hindu who has not philosophized on the matter, he will just, or she will say, this God brings me good. I worship Ganesh, who is the elephant head God. He has the body of a human being and the head of an elephant. It's popular, Ganesh. And when I pray to him, I get good. My prayers are answered. I get rewards. That's why. No problem. And it's the same thing, same line of argument, which sometimes when you're trying to explain Islam to Christians, they will say, I have experienced God, Jesus, in my life. You understand? You're believing this because you didn't experience Jesus in your life. You know, I have turned to Him, I have prayed, and my prayers were answered. This is my proof. I know that Jesus is God. Right? This is the argument. So for that kind of argument, you take them back to the Hindu. Okay, what about the Hindu who prays to Ganesh and his or her prayers are answered? What do you think? Ganesh is God? Or the animist who prays to the trees or the rivers and their prayers are answered? What do you think? The trees and the rivers are God? Of course the Christian will say no. These are not God. So I said, then who is answering their prayers? The God, real God. It's God who is answering their prayers. Not the rivers and the trees or the idols. It's God. And we say the same thing with Jesus. You think that Jesus is answering your prayers, but it is God who is answering your prayers. And really, the difference between Ganesh and Jesus is only semantics. They're only words. In reality, Jesus was part of God's creation, just as Ganesh and the others are part of God's creation. So in the same way, it wasn't God answering those who prayed to his creation, whether they were praying to stones and sticks or to idols. It is also God not answering, it's God who's answering the prayer, and not the individual, the human being who you believe to be God. But now if you speak to the educated Hindu who has philosophized his religion, he studied under a few yogis or whatever, and you ask him or her, why are you worshipping this object of your own creation? They'll say, we're not worshipping it. Please don't misunderstand. We are not worshipping this idol that you see before you. No, we are worshipping Brahman, the one absolute God, who is everywhere, pervades everything. But at the time of our worship of our idol, Brahman becomes concentrated inside of the idol. So we're worshiping God who is concentrated in the idol and not the idol itself. Just like you're worshiping the Kaaba. And we say, no, we're not worshiping the Kaaba. We're worshiping God. So no, it's the same thing. There you are bowing down to this black cube, and you insist that you're not worshiping it, but you're bowing down before it. Of course, there is a qualitative difference. Right? There is a difference here. Because for those who worship these idols, believing that God is concentrated in the idol, if you take away the idol, can they worship? No. They have to have the idol. Whereas, if somebody takes away the Kaaba, can we still worship? Of course we can. In fact, you can go inside of the Kaaba and worship. It would be inconceivable for them to be climbing inside of their idols and worshiping. It doesn't work. That doesn't work. Okay? So there is a qualitative difference between what we're doing and what they're doing. Right? But, unfortunately, Muslims confuse this issue in the minds of these people. They confuse it. Why? By putting in their homes pictures of the Kaaba. Putting on their prayer rugs pictures of the Kaaba. So everywhere they go and they're going to pray, there is this image of the Kaaba. So to those externally who are looking at these things, it's just like we're worshipping the Kaaba. So it's wrong, really, to put pictures of the Kaaba on our prayer rugs, on our walls, it's wrong. It's error. And it misguides people. Of course, there's another point that you should know, that many Hindus have this belief concerning our worship of the Kaaba. Not what I just said. There's another belief that they have. One Hindu from England, living in Toronto, I was flying to England, and he was sitting beside me, so we got in this conversation, and we became friendly. So he now felt he could ask me a question. He said, listen, I have this question that's been bothering me all my life. But I couldn't ask any Muslim. I had Muslim friends, but I felt shy to ask them this, But, I can see you are open-minded and, you're coming from a Western background. So, do you mind if I ask you this question? I said, sure, go ahead. He said, growing up, my parents told me, and my brothers and sisters, that inside the Kaaba, you have one of our gods called Shiva Lingam. I started to laugh, of course, I said, he looked at me, smiled, he saw me laughing, And he said, yeah, that's what they told us, It was and also in Medina, that's what you have there in that mosque of the Prophet. You got Shiva Lingam there too. Well, I explained to him that, of course, no, this is not true. We don't have any one of your idols inside of the Kaaba. You can go inside the Kaaba, it's open, there's nothing inside there. Anyway, so if you're giving da'wah to Hindus, just be aware of this, that a number of them have this idea, this concept that we have inside of the Kaaba one of their gods. And it's good for you actually when you're involved in this thing too. You should go and look up what Shiva Lingam stands for. You go up and look up what Lingam stands for and you'll be shocked, right? Anyway, but it's good to know it, because in the course of da'wah with them, it's good to clarify these points, because sometimes they don't even realize it themselves. Anyway, what we're saying here is that this belief in God being everywhere is the basis of a number of these individuals who believe in idolatry. And it becomes the justification for Al-Hallaj, who we spoke about earlier, is from the 10th century, who claimed an al-Haq. He was a Sufi. He became what they call among the Sufi saints, who was put in the hierarchy of saints. And people will call on him Al-Hallaj. He was known for this famous statement, an al-Haq. When the Muslim judges brought him before them, and asked him to retract this statement because of its implications, he stood up in the court and he opened up his cloak and said, "There is nothing inside this cloak except Allah." So he removed from them any doubts about what he intended. At that point, the only thing left to do was to execute him. So they cut off his head. Of course, the Sufis in their books, they write that when his head was cut off and it hit the ground rolling, it kept on saying, "An al-Haq, an al-Haq, an al-Haq." They said, okay, this is proof that what he was saying was right. He was killed, wrongly, etc., etc. Really, he was on the truth. Of course, for us, even though this story is probably apocryphal, not authentic, if we concede to them that it did happen, no problem. Because if we go to the case of Prophet Musa, when he went to the top of Mount Tur to receive revelation, and he left behind Harun and the people, and that individual, as Samiri, he asked the people to give them their jewelry. He got their jewelry together, he melted it all down, and he threw in the mix some dust, as he said, from the footprint of an angel, right? And from that he made the golden calf, and he called all the people around, and he said to them, "This is the God of Moses, the one who Moses is going on top of the mount to receive revelation from. This is the God, this golden calf." Now, do you think the people just said, "MashaAllah, let's worship it," and they just bowed down and started worshiping the calf? No. You were looking at this. Are you serious? Then what happened? The cow said, "Moo." That's what Allah says in the Quran. The cow lowed, it said, "Moo." People said, "Whoa, this is the God of Moses." They dropped down and bowed. When the cow communicated, right, this was what convinced the people that this was God. Now, how do we explain that? Did the cow actually low? No. We know that the jinn that can possess individuals as well as objects entered into the cow and said, "Moo." And the people thought it was the cow. Similarly, the jinn can go into the head chopped off of Hallaj and keep saying, "An al-Haq, an al-Haq, an al-Haq." If that's what you need, they're there for you. Right? So we don't have a problem with that claim. Now, of course, we have other groups like the Druze. You hear about the Druze in Lebanon. Their belief also is that God became carnate, human, in the form of the last of the Fatimid rulers in Egypt, called Al-Hakim bi Amrillah. They believe that he became God in that person. The Ismaili Shiites, Aga Khanis, right, whose leader is Abdul Karim Aga Khan, they believe that their Imam is God incarnate. In fact, when one of the earlier Imams of theirs, the one who was weighed and given his body weight in gold, in platinum, and in diamonds by his followers, when he was asked in Egypt, because they have They were based in Egypt. When he was asked, why do you allow your people to worship you? He said, in my country, people worship a cow. He's from India. Surely I'm better than a cow.